You are listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
What's up, everybody? My name is Craig Stout. This is 21 Questions brought to you by our great pals at Macadoodles. Macadoodles has a store in Lee's Summit, Missouri. It is an excellent place to buy all your liquor because they have the best selection, the best prices, and elite customer service. If I had to give a Super Bowl ring to any liquor store in the entire world, it would be Macadoodles. That's how highly I think of this company. And that's also how highly I think of my good pal, Maddie Lane, joining me for today's 21 Questions. Maddie, my friend, it's still Super Bowl week. Have you come down from all of that at all yet?
Well, so here's the thing. First of all, Macadoodles, I would say they're like the world champions of liquor stores, kind of like the Kansas City Chiefs are world champions of the world. Two, yeah, I've come down a little. So here's the tricky part. You know me. There's a Super Bowl here. It was fun. I've actually almost been more excited about the Super Bowl on like Monday and Tuesday than I was Sunday night. And then now we've kind of transitioned. It's draft time for me. So like there's not really a downtime. Like we go from, oh yeah, I'm super excited about the Super Bowl. And right when I think you're supposed to have a letdown, I'm like, time to get into the draft. I'm getting excited for the draft now because it's finally time to start talking about it. Looking at flights to get back to Kansas City because the draft is in there. I get to see yours and Kent and BJ's and Tuck's beautiful faces. So, I'm still riding high right now.
Yeah, I'm riding pretty high as well. I haven't had a whole lot of time to dive into the draft prior to this. I'm excited to get into it. We got the Combine coming up very soon. Combine means CBAT scores start rolling in. I get to start really digging into the corners again. I'm really excited to do all that. So yeah, I'm ready for that, but I am still basking in a Super Bowl victory. So much more fun when your team wins, you guys. Breaking news. Breaking news there.
Big if true, even.
Big if true. All right. First question here coming from our good pal, Joel Penfield. Could you have scored on corn dog, Maddie?
Okay. On corn dog, I think I could have. I can catch a football. It's been a while since I've caught a football in pads and a helmet, so that's the trick. But you give me just enough time to get used to doing it with that stuff on. I think I could catch that ball in Bolton because there was no one there. I think it would be easier to score on hot dog, the second one, because the play was just busted. Kadarius Toney had to put a little pizzazz into his little whip route, his return motion, and coming back out. There was a little bit extra to it. Not that Sky didn't, but that was just a broken adjustment by the Eagles. Whereas in the first one, Toney just played against their rules. So I think you had to be more intentional. And they're not going to rock and roll my speed across the field. Let me be very clear. There's no need to try to rock and roll and out leverage me on jet motion. So maybe it gets trickier.
I would love to see Avonte Maddox just dead sprinting across the backside of a formation to catch up with you on a flat route. Just for reference on corn dog, no, my hip would completely pop out of socket. I would fall into a heap on the ground the moment I tried to pivot out into the flat. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't have scored. No. Zach Oracle Matagorkin asks, who are your top 3 free agents for defensive tackle? Maddie, I mean, I've got some here. Deron Payne, I think, is probably at the top of both of our lists there. A guy that would be a true impact player at that position, could play a one-tech position next to Chris Jones as well. Doesn't mean you got to move on from Chris Jones. Yes, that's a lot of money wrapped up in the defensive line, but guess what, guys? They've wrapped up a lot of money in that defensive line before, and it hasn't killed the team. So I think that would be a fun tandem there. Maddie, you want to take another one here?
I think Javon Hargrave is the clear next guy up after Deron Payne. I think Payne's first because of age, a little bit more explosive, a little bit more of a pass rusher, but Javon Hargrave for the Eagles is phenomenal. He's exceptional. He's 30 years old now, so maybe some teams will be a little scared off by that, but his talent level, I think, very easily clears everybody else. So I think it's Payne, Hargrave, and then after this is where I think it gets a little bit dicier. Now it's kind of what do you want? What are you looking for? So if you go through here, I don't know if anybody else really jumped out to you.
there's like Shy Tuttle's in there, maybe a medium buy kind of scenario there. I mean, you got some older guys. Fletcher Cox is obviously out there. David Onyemata, sorry, is out there. So I mean, there's some older guys. Maybe not somebody that Brett Veach is going to pursue. I mean, we got to throw Colin Saunders' name in the mix here after the season that he had. I mean, if you're trying to buy medium with Colin Saunders in my book.
Dalvin Tomlinson, if you're looking for a guy that can play a little bit against the run and still not have to always leave the field against the pass. Sheldon Rankins is oddly still only 29. I remember him coming out, was at Louisville, where he was one of the super young guys, but he's still only 29, bouncing around the league. So like if you're just looking for a guy that gives a little bit of a pass rush, maybe. So there's some DTs. It's a decent free agent DT class, but I think most of it's kind of propped up by Payne and Hargrave. So like if you want a DT, you probably have to go after one of those two guys, or you're just kind of filling out, I would say, more role players at the position than a full-on starter.
For sure. All right, Lee87 asks the question, the biggest surprise addition to the roster for 2023. I know we're going to get asked 42,000 times who the biggest surprise cut is going to be for 2023. I like this approach. Biggest surprise addition for 2023. Anybody jump to mind for you, Matt?
I mean, I think there is an outside chance the Chiefs go spend big money on one of those defensive tackles. And I think that might kind of surprise some people because they already have Chris Jones. Everyone's thinking you want a defensive end. You don't need another D tackle right away. I don't know. Just floating through the rumor mill and some of the stuff that Chiefs kicked around during the season, I think there's an outside chance they go after a Hargrave or a Deron Payne with a pretty fat payday to play next to Chris Jones rather than paying another paying a defensive end.
I'm going to say DeAndre Hopkins. I think that would be a big surprise, not just because it would probably mean they're moving off from Juju Smith-Schuster, a guy that this team definitely loves. You might, at that point, depending on how you feel about Kadarius Toney, how you feel about Sky Moore's development, you might even hit the abort button on Marquez Valdes-Scantling's contract. You could, in that scenario, if you were adding a guy like DeAndre Hopkins. Now, I don't know what his trade value is at this point. We haven't heard any real rumors. There's been stuff people, like in the Discord, we talk about it. It's like, man, would you give up a 3? Absolutely. Would you give up a 2? Absolutely. The guy's only 30. He is fairly effective. He has not finished the past 2 years, so that valuation's a little bit lower. But man, you get a true X out there that can gain separation. Like that guy fits perfectly in this offense. He absolutely does. Put him in the exact role that Sammy Watkins played and thrive with so much more than what Sammy could even bring to the offense. Plus, you've still got Kadarius Toney. You've still got Sky Moore. You've still got Travis Kelce. Your weapons then go from really good this year. I mean, they really were good across the board to really great with those guys on the field. I would be excited about that group.
Please.
All right. We've got Zach asking, will it take me a long time to leave my space station to work on solid ground again? Referencing the fact that moving to Colorado, I'm not in a space station right here. There's a tree right out there, you guys.
So he planted it. You hear that? First right there. First life form on Mars. A tree that Craig planted.
Tojo144 asked, what Valentine's Day card did KCSN send to Eli Apple? Nothing, because we couldn't figure out his Cancun address. Sorry, Eli. All right, the big institution's biggest fan has a serious one here. At what price point should we re-sign Orlando Brown Jr.? Same question for Wiley. We are not cap experts by any means, Maddie, but if you want to talk in realms of contracts for players and competitive players and stuff like that, I think that would give people a good idea.
Yeah, so I think for Orlando Brown, you're paying him more than Ronnie Stanley. I think you're hoping that you don't pay him more than Laramie Tunsil, but with his age and coming off of another All-Pro and then the Super Bowl ring, it might be hard to sign Orlando Brown Jr. to not the highest paid offensive tackle contract in the NFL. I just straight up, it might be kind of hard to make that work, but I think your absolute bottom floor is more than Ronnie Stanley. Probably substantially more. So I think you're probably looking at 21-ish per APY for his like just bottom, his basement level. There's no chance you're going to get below 21.
That's the thing that we've got to kind of feel out here, because if you're signing a contract like that, obviously his first year money is going to be low. It just will be low. And so you don't have to worry about, those hits until 3 or 4 years down the road. But we're also kind of asking those questions about Chris Jones, signing that contract, and his big money would hit 3 or 4 years down the road. Now, again, cap is going up. It went up even bigger than everybody was expecting this year. So yes, I could see that Orlando Brown Jr., and he is right to ask for it. It wasn't even the way that he played in the postseason. This is him making his 4th straight Pro Bowl, which means the NFL, despite not being one of the fan vote guys, that means the NFL views him in that light, period. Whether or not fans do, the NFL views him in that light. And if that's the case, that means he and his agent are going to ask for $21, $22, $23 million, and they're going to be justified in doing it because there are other teams that will. And the Kansas City Chiefs are not going to go into this season without a left tackle that they can trust on the roster. And they trust Orlando Brown Jr., and they like him. So that man is sticking around. I think he's going to get paid. I think Andrew Wiley is going to be around the $8 to $10 million range. I do. I think he's going to get medium right tackle money. And medium right tackle money is probably pricing himself out of Kansas City. Like, it is. And good for him. I mean, he should absolutely go get that money. But, he's got a couple of rings. He's got everything that he could have ever wanted out of Kansas City at this point. But he's going to get paid a lot of money somewhere else. And I don't know, because the Chiefs have consistently tried to replace him, by drafting guys over the top of him. I don't know if they view him in the same light that the rest of the NFL will, unfortunately.
So you're slotting him in ahead of players a little bit more than La'el Collins and a little bit less than Rob Havenstein of the Rams. That's kind of the range that you pegged. And I don't know if that's wrong. Down the stretch, La'el Collins was hurt, but La'el Collins wasn't great for the Bengals beforehand either way. Like, he still wasn't really. I think you can easily make a case that Andrew Wiley was better the last half of this season before Collins was hurt and the last half of the year than what Collins was. I don't know if and he's not going to compete for a Jack Conklin $15 million per year. No. But so I don't know. That's the range you're looking at, and it's really hard. Them looking through the contracts now. There's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 right tackles making over $10 million per year, and George Fant was the next closest at 9, and he's a free agent again. So and then La'el Collins is next. I don't know if the Chiefs can pay a right tackle that much money and fill out the rest of their roster and Orlando Brown Jr.
And I think he and his agent have every right to ask for that. At this point, because again, somebody will pay him that. He's 2-time Super Bowl champion. So anyway, Kay Gummiger asks, "Hey, Maddie, how excited are you to be Maddie Kuiper for the next few months?" This is kind of a shameless plug here.
Let's go.
KCSN Discord that you get by subscribing to KCSN Substack, which you can do by also buying the draft guide. The link is up on these guys' Twitter pages. You can get 3 months of the KCSN Substack. That is KCSN Daily. That's what that's called. And you will get access to the KCSN Discord as well as the ultra awesome draft guide. There will be a full member mock draft that was run last year. Our guy, Kay Gummiger, ran the thing. He ran through every permutation. There were all kinds of trades. Everybody took a team. They picked every single pick in the draft with trades, with everything, trading even players on teams. It wasn't just trading picks. It was trading players on teams. Maddie out here graded every single one of the first 2 days of the draft. Is that right?
At least 2 days, yeah. I think I might have started on the 3rd day, and I had to call it at that point in time, and then just kind of gave some final grades to people that were asking that hung around.
Yeah.
I did my best Mel Kiper, so I tried to grade everyone's draft picks as they were happening and live. I think this year it sounds like we might be trying to start even a little bit earlier, which would give me more time to grade stuff. Last year it took them about a week to do the draft, so it's not like you're spending too long a time. It seemed like everybody that signed up still paid attention, so if you're interested, you do got to make sure you get on that Discord, sign up for that KCSN Substack, because I think Christian K. Gumminger, he's working on getting the list of people that want to contend right now. We have a fun way this year to figure out who gets which teams. So if this sounds interesting to you, you want to jump on it early, because we're going to pick teams before free agency starts this year.
Oh, yeah.
So you can kind of follow your team through free agency. You don't get to make any decisions then, but that way you get to follow your team in free agency and just feel a little bit more connected to them. So we're getting it started soon.
There were discussions about including free agency this year, and everybody.
I vetoed it.
Yeah, everybody just kind of went, ooh, that's going to be a little bit steep. The draft itself was enough. But yeah, fun little stuff like that happening in the Discord all the time. So if you're interested in that, go sign up. You can get the draft guide, or $30 a year, $5 a month. Go do that. All right, next question we've got up here from Nick Deal. You think there's a possibility to make a big splash at wide receiver? He says, for example, Keenan Allen, when he's inevitably cut by Los Angeles, whilst they have a core of their wide receiver under good, cheap cost control, KT and Sky Moore, or are they convinced more than ever that Pat can make any group work and spend that money elsewhere?
I don't think that they're going to go unload the bag at a wide receiver, right? So, like, if Michael Thomas is cut, if DeAndre Hopkins, Keenan Allen, whoever are cut, I don't think they're going to go throw the bag after them to make them one of the highest paid wide receivers. But if they become available for what they deem a reasonable amount, and that's why I think we're kind of focusing on these slightly older players that maybe aren't coming off of their best seasons because maybe they're not looking at top dollar, rather going after a ring, I think it is absolutely a possibility. The hard part, though, is go look at the free agent wide receiver class. There's no big splash there. Juju Smith-Schuster is the most productive. He's the highest rated free agent wide receiver. It's him and Jacoby Myers. Neither one of those are splashes. So you're kind of relying on a trade or waiting for someone to get cut, which makes it a little dicey.
Do you think that Keenan Allen gets more money than Juju Smith-Schuster this year? I think there's an argument there. I think there's a real discussion there, because I will hear that Keenan Allen will be valued by some teams higher. Both of them are hurt a lot. Keenan Allen is older. I mean, but Keenan Allen has produced. I don't know. I think that's tough.
Yeah, that's hard. I think Keenan Allen will get more because I think it'll be like a 1-year deal. Probably. I don't know. That's a tricky one. I'm intrigued. I'm looking now. Keenan Allen's played 16, 16, 16, 14, 16, 10 games. So really, he's coming off of his only really significant injured year, but age, like you said, age starts to factor in here. So I don't know. I think Keenan Allen gets more. Seeing how many games he's played up until then, I think Keenan Allen probably gets more.
Speaking of getting more, I want more Tucker D. Franklin in my life.
Folks, I got to tell you about today's sponsor, and that is Athletic Greens. I've been taking AG1 by Athletic Greens literally every day, and I gave it a try because I wanted to get that better gut health. I wanted to have the sustained energy. You got to support the immune system, especially this time of the year. And I hated taking all those pills and vitamins to actually get all those supplements, and it tastes great as well. I take it in the morning before I start my day, before I make that cup of coffee, and it makes me feel ready to take on everything that we've got going on here at KCSN. And all great athletes take care of their body. I'm not the same kind of athlete as Patrick Mahomes, but I still like to take care of my body. And that's when I've been going to AG1. That's why I'm a huge fan. You get all that nutrition in just one little cup. It's great for long-term gut health support as well, with just 75 high-quality ingredients that give me key daily nutrients. If a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplemental routine, then Athletic Greens is giving you a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Go to athleticgreens.com/KCSN. That's athleticgreens.com/KCSN. Check it out.
Thanks, Tucker, you elite athlete, you. Next question we've got here, Keith McLean. Chances Frank Clark is on the roster in 2023. Boy, if you would have asked this question 6 weeks ago, I would have said very slim. You asking me now? I think it's 50-50. I do. I think Frank wants to be here. I think Frank knows the system well enough, and I think Frank is not asking for big money anymore. He got his big payday from the Chiefs. They paid him out pretty well. They took care of him. They even took pretty good care of him this last year when I think everybody thought that he was going to be cutting on the street. I don't think that he'd cost very much money. And frankly, if all he does, and this is not all he would show up for, but if all he does is show up for the playoffs and perform, he's worth that. He's worth that to this team right now. But obviously, he's going to do more. He helped the progression of all those rookies. They have all shouted him out on the defensive line. Not a bad dude to have on your team in a situation where you might be adding some new players to the mix.
I think he or Carlos Dunlap will be back. I think it makes more sense to expect Frank Clark to be back because he's more familiar with the system, because he's been around a little bit longer, so on and so forth. I don't think Carlos Dunlap will be as expensive, though. So it all depends on how the Chiefs want to go about it. I think one of those two for sure is back, though. So it's hard to put a percentage on it because I don't know which one the Chiefs are winning. What is Frank Clark going to want, number one? Because there's dead money involved, so technically they might not be spending. Actually, it might be the same price of new money, quote unquote, to get Frank Clark or Dunlap, since there's already going to be dead cap tied into Frank Clark. But one will be back, one probably won't. I don't know which way I'm leaning right now.
Fish asks, how much does drafting 3 solid corners increase the likelihood that they don't extend Sneed? And he made sure to add in here, I am not rooting for this.
I don't think very much. I think there's a couple positions that you pay, and cornerback is probably one of them. Now, that has not been the Chiefs' MO. That has not been what the Chiefs under Steve Spagnuolo, Brett Veach have done, but who should they have paid that they've had?
They haven't had one. Yeah.
They haven't had one yet. And I think you go back and you look at, like, L'Jarius Sneed does so much more than just play corner. And now as I'm going through this in my head, I'm talking to myself and like, well, okay, he tackles really well, but so does every single corner they just drafted. He's a pretty good blitzer, but so is every single corner they just drafted. Like, these other guys do a lot of the stuff he does, but I think it's a proven thing. It's a known commodity. And I really think you probably would lose a lot of versatility. You no longer have your second slot. I don't want to see Jalen Watson or Josh Williams playing the slot, right? So if I want to cycle Trent McDuffie in or out of the slot or move him around or have that other option, L'Jarius Sneed's that guy and will always be that guy. So I don't know. I feel like you lose a lot of versatility. You lose a guy that's the leader of that cornerback room because he's been here the longest. I don't think that it is high. I think they will pay him. I think they will pay him. It's just a matter of, is he going to go chase the highest cornerback money, or is he going to take really good cornerback money to stay in Kansas City?
I will answer this question with another question that we have down below. I will get to that. But yes, I think they keep him here. All right, next question here is from Nick Deal again here. And I really wanted to hit on this one because we haven't done a whole lot of talking about this. But he asks, is this the year to try and draft high Kelsey's replacement? Everyone seems to think this is the deepest tight end class in a while. Kelsey's going to be 34 next season. And he said on his podcast, it's almost a direct quote, that he doesn't, or not on his podcast, after the postgame, it was doesn't know how many seasons he's got left in him. But he did say on his podcast, this was the hardest season physically of any season in the NFL for him. So he kind of asks, would you be happy drafting a tight end high? Is it something you want to focus on? We've been hearing this for years, basically, that, the Chiefs are going to make a concerted effort to draft a tight end. Travis Kelce isn't getting any younger. He's a focal part of their offense. They got to find somebody to replace him. First of all, you don't replace Travis Kelce, period. That's a Hall of Famer. I know we said that about Tony Gonzalez. They managed to do it. Doesn't matter. They're not going to replace Travis Kelce, period. Second of all, they seem to like these kind of by committee type guys, the Noah Grays, the Jody Fortson, Blake Bell. They brought back a lot of these guys that can do a little bit of everything. And they made Travis Kelce kind of the de facto X receiver. So if you are going to be trying to draft Kelce's replacement, I think you're drafting either an X receiver or a strictly moved tight end at this point, because they've done a good job of filling out the rest of the roster with guys that can inline block a little more, can be with their hand in the dirt. Teams aren't playing the Chiefs 12 personnel with Kelce on the field like 12 personnel. They're playing it like 11. So roll into that. Try and get another guy that can play the X a little bit more and alleviate some of those snaps for Travis Kelce. That's how I would approach it, rather than just saying, we got to go get the best tight end in the draft. They can do a little bit of everything. I'm looking for the next George Kittle. I'm not looking for that guy. I mean, I am, but I'm not targeting that guy. I'm targeting more of an X or a move guy instead.
So, everything Craig said is true. So I'm going to look at kind of the prospects I think that we're talking about here that we'd be going into. I do want to say, I think it's hard. First round tight ends don't work very well. Second round tight ends, even still, like it's such a grab bag, right? Tight end is such a grab bag position in terms of projecting draft picks to being good in the NFL. Look where Travis Kelce went. Look where George Kittle went. Like go Mark Andrews. Go on and go forth through all of these highly rated and these really good tight ends. So, this is where it gets tricky. Who do you want to go for? Going down the Craig's pipe or pathway of saying they're looking for a move tight end, I would rule out a Michael Mayer and a Darnell Washington right off the bat. Those are guys that I don't think fit the Travis Kelce role, and they'd be great to play with him. And maybe you want to make a transition after Travis Kelce moves on to not try to follow in the same footsteps. I'm here for that argument too. I'm here for you wanting to find a Dallas Goedert, who's a very good receiver, but just equally as good of a blocker, and you are going to use him as a traditional tight end so that you're not putting all that pressure on them. I get the path there. So if that's the case, go ahead. The two guys I keep coming back to, Luke Musgrave out of Oregon State, Dalton Kincaid out of Utah. I like Luke Musgrave from Oregon State a little bit better. I think he's a little bigger. He's got the Travis Kelce build. He's 6'5", 255 pounds, but when you see him move, nobody thinks of him as a big player. You don't think he's big until you see him next to other guys, and he cracked like 21 miles an hour at that weight at the Senior Bowl, so he can really move. He's not as shifty, though, so that's where if you want to go more shifty, I think Dalton Kincaid fits that mold. He's a lot less of a blocker, but he's a little bit shiftier. He's going to win underneath. He's got really good hands. Anyone that's watched Utah has this past year saw him have 800 catches. It's like, those are the two guys, but if you're the Chiefs, you're probably having to draft them in round 1. And I don't know if I love that value, so maybe you wait to get a Sam Laporta or a Tucker Kraft in round 2, hope they work out. Like, there's pathways to doing this. It's just tight ends are really hard to draft. They're just really hard to draft. Like, they
are.
The big swing.
Musgrave reportedly runs a 4.40. I mean, that is moving for a guy his size. I am always team take athletic outliers. I am always that team. But that being said, you're going to play him at X. That's what you're going to do with him. You're going to line him up. You're going to run him up the seam. Give me an X receiver. I don't know. I'm fine with Musgrave. I'd be very happy with a player like that because I feel like Andy Reid would find him ways to get free looks and get him up the seam. Would completely weaponize him, totally and completely. But man, that is a hefty spend, especially in this class, like Maddie said. All right, ABKC kind of asked something similar to the wide receiver room, and next season I just want to shout him out. There. We answered that a little bit earlier. Drew Clark asks, how many Hall of Famers are on this team after the second Super Bowl win? Coaches, staff, and players. Well, before this Super Bowl, Andy and Mahomes were automatic Hall of Famers, and Travis Kelce were automatic Hall of Famers. I think at this point, Joe Thuney has an argument. He's got a lot of rings. I know offensive linemen, it's hard to get in, but rings matter way more for offensive linemen than they do for a lot of other positions.
What's his all-pro count, though? That's, I think, a main thing. I don't know what it is.
He may have 1, maybe 2. I don't remember what it was.
Right. I think that's a really hard way to get in.
Zero. He's got 2 second-team All-Pros and only 1 Pro Bowl.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if that's going to work. Yeah, I don't know if that's going to work.
Let's see here. Man. I mean, Chris Jones.
Was Steve Spagnuolo in there? I mean, it's a lot of rings. You don't think before this?
Now it is. Now
it is. So? Okay.
Yeah. I think he and Chris Jones are both in. Yeah. Man.
It's probably right?
That might be it for the guy. You know what? Eric Bieniemy. Why not? I mean, at this point, because I think he's got at least the foundation laid with some of that stuff, and he's been a part of some of the biggest moments of those 2 Super Bowls. It does sound like Eric Bieniemy, at the time that we are recording this, which, I mean, by the time this comes out, may already be signed, looks very positive for him to go to the offensive coordinator in Washington. I think that's BS. He shouldn't have to go there. But if he goes to Washington and he helps turn around that offense and gets to be a head coach that finds some level of success, they're going to look back on those 2 rings even more favorably as a guy that was kind of a little bit more of a game planner, help out, and that sort of guy. I can see how a guy like that might sneak in, not a first ballot guy, like one of those kind of legacy ones that they eventually give to those guys that have been around a long time and offered a lot to the game. But I don't know, that those might be the only ones that I can really look at and say that they're automatic Hall of Famers at this point.
Right. I think, yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I think you could make a case that Creed Humphrey might be on his way, like a guy that is setting up a good, like Bieniemy, I think a guy that's setting up a good foundation. If they can continue Super Bowl ring, he's going to have the all pros as he goes through. And like, that's what matters. So, yeah, I think he's the next guy, like player that I'd put on there. I'm going to be honest. I don't know how the hall works with non-head coaches. I don't know how often they get in. I don't know what you have to do. So I can't really go much deeper into the coaches after that.
Yeah. You got to be pretty elite, and you got to be at least a coordinator, really. It takes a lot to get in. I will say this, a performance like that out of Nick Bolton in the Super Bowl sets him up very nicely if he continues to post. I mean, again,
the tackles, that's what that matters. Zach Thomas got in, so.
Zach Thomas, listen, don't get me started. Maddie's trying to get me fired up. He's
that guy.
Zach. One of them has more tackles for loss. One of them makes more impact plays, and he's on the Chiefs right now. Don't get me started. If Zach Thomas is getting into the Hall of Fame, KCSN's own Derek Johnson should have already been in. Damn it. Okay. I'm going on. Grayson asks, not to be a Debbie Downer, but who underperformed or
hold on.
What's that?
Nick Bolton has more career touchdowns than Zach Thomas, I do believe.
Look at that. Fraud. Grayson asked, not to be a Debbie Downer, but who underperformed in the Super Bowl, if anyone? I'm sure that we can look at the defense and like say that people underperformed. Like you could maybe look at Trent McDuffie and say, hey, listen, that's below his standards. Like he's underperforming to his standards. But I don't know that I look at any individual and I say that guy played badly, was a reason why things went south in any given time. I mean, even on defense, like you look at a lot of the stuff that happened. Yeah, L'Jarius Sneed blew a coverage. Trent McDuffie wasn't able to find a ball, but a lot of stuff that was happening was just absolutely insane play by Jalen Hurts, Dallas Goedert, A.J. Brown. So it wasn't anything that I'm looking at the defense and going, oh, you're underperforming. It was more like, you got by a better player, by a good player in that moment. That just happened. Do you have anybody that jumps out?
Yeah, it's MVS. Only got the one target, but it was a really bad look, and it was really unfortunate for him that Greg Olsen was on the call and could point out to everybody that the route's target was not where he was. So not only did, we all would have seen the difficulty tracking the ball, but I think everybody been like, well, yeah, he failed to adjust it, but the ball wasn't right on him. Like, maybe he should have adjusted better. But then when you have somebody that knows what that route is and is like, hey, he's actually not where he's supposed to be at all, it just makes it look worse. And I think the big letdown is he came off that superstar, amazing AFC Championship game, and then he didn't even get into the stat sheet in the Super Bowl. And it's not like the Chiefs' offense was humming the entire way. There was room to make plays there in that first half. So I think that's one for me, but I don't know if that's necessarily a surprise either. Like, we kind of expected that.
Yeah. Layden Y44 asks, do you think EB will actually leave this year for another offensive coordinator job, or will he be back? I think he will leave. And yeah. I think it's entirely to get a head coaching job. It has become very apparent through 16 different interviews that teams do not view him as a head coaching candidate under Andy Reid. Now he's going to go, especially if it's Washington. I think Washington makes a ton of sense. I just do. Ron Rivera is going to run the defense, and he wants somebody that can be autonomous and run the offense. Guess what? Eric Bieniemy can do that. I know that Andy Reid's been kind of over all of that, been doing all of that. That is the best scenario for Eric Bieniemy to walk in, say, this is what I would do in this scenario, and get to do it. Ron Rivera is going to trust him because Andy Reid's going to vouch for EB. And Ron knows EB. Like, those guys all know each other. So he's going to let him come in, run the offense the way that he wants to. If that offense is good, if it looks any good, I think that Washington will be a competitive football team next year with that defense. And I think that there is a chance that Eric Bieniemy springboards that into a head coaching job before he would do it for Kansas City for whatever reason, especially if a guy like Derek Carr ends up in Washington. Like, I mean, if he gets a quarterback that can just be competent for him for a little bit, I think that offense will hum with Bieniemy at the helm.
Yeah, I think he's got to go somewhere else if he wants to continue this climb to being a head coach. This had to be a big EB thing. I agree it'll help him. I also wonder if he doesn't hurt himself when he gets in the interview room. Just based on some rumors, it sounds like he may not always interview the best, and I don't know if going to be an offensive coordinator elsewhere will help that. It can't hurt it, though. It can't hurt it to go out there and be the guy calling and designing a good offense in another team. Maybe you come in and blow the interview, but guess what? You can still be like, but this is my offense. This is what I do. This can talk for me. Right now, I don't think that he has a lot that he can show and say, maybe I'm not interviewing as well as you want. Maybe I'm rubbing this GM or owner the wrong way, but what does he have to slap on the table right now and be like, but look, this is what I'm doing. Like, I think there's a little bit of uncertainty there. And I think it's okay to say that he might just interview poorly. It's not anything bad about him as a coach, as an offensive coordinator. He might just simply interview poorly. I think Ben Solak, who covers the Eagles, said that he thinks that a big part of why Josh Gannon got the Cardinals job was he's a great interviewer. He does great in press conferences. He knows how to talk to different types of people, be direct, but also give them enough detail that they feel fulfilled. Like he said, he's a great person to talk to and interview. He thinks that played a huge role. Maybe Bieniemy's just not that guy. And that's okay to say. It's just he's got to find a way to get past that, and he has not so far.
Yeah, and the other flip side of that kind of aligns with what you're saying. Nick Sirianni was apparently a terrible interview. Like, just absolutely terrible interview. But he had stuff to point to. Like, he had work to point to. And, I mean, if that's all it's going to take is just him being like, he can walk to the table and say, hey, it's this, it's this, it's this. And people might just be looking at that going, yeah, sure, whatever. That's probably Andy. And I mean, it's never stopped an Andy offensive coordinator before. Like, that's the other part of that. It's never stopped an Andy offensive coordinator before. It shouldn't be stopping him here, especially with how much Andy Reid stands on the table for this man and how respected Andy Reid is. Andy Reid's telling you that man brings something to the table. Guess what? He probably brings something to the table. And he was doing that well before there was a third-round pick or 2 third-round picks involved. He was just trying to get his man a job. So, I don't know. Best of luck if he does go and leave somewhere. I hope he kills it. And then I hope he gets a head coaching job because it's way, way, way past due. All right. Grayson, kind of in line with this, asks if the Chiefs brought in an offensive coordinator from outside the team. Maddie, who do you want? I know your guy's gone now. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. This is, I need a lot more time to prepare for this. First of all, I think Matt Nagy's your offensive coordinator.
I think he is too.
I don't think there's any other options. Now, I would be very happy to bring in a QB coach. And I mean, if we were going to do offensive coordinator, it would have been Todd Monken, who went to the Baltimore Ravens. I think that would have been fun, adding something new. If you're just adding a QB coach, it gets trickier because you got to find, you'd have to find somebody moving laterally or wanting to go from an offensive coordinator probably at college up to the NFL level. It gets tricky. Cliff Kingsbury's collecting a lot of money from the Cardinals and not doing a whole. I mean, I've seen his setup there in Thailand. I get it. He might not want to go do any work. I understand. But if he was intrigued, if he wanted to stay in the NFL and not go back to college where he would be hired up immediately by somebody, I would not hate having him come on to be a QB coach. If it doesn't work, you move on quickly. It's not a big deal. And you just get some outside ideas that aren't directly from this team. And before anyone gets mad and throws to me all his records as a head coach, he wouldn't be the Chiefs head coach.
Yeah.
He would be just coaching the quarterback room, focusing all of his energy on just the quarterback room and whatever else the Chiefs throw his way. Go look at Matt Nagy, the head coach. Look at Matt Nagy, the QB coach. Pretty big difference.
Yeah, Matt Nagy in this offense, pretty damn good. Like, yeah, Eric Bieniemy had a lot of influence. Andy Reid obviously had the most influence. Matt Nagy had plenty. There were a lot of...
Travis said it.
Yeah, he did.
He did third down and red zone stuff a lot. Like, that was not all. He's the only one, but he did a lot of that.
Right. So Matt Nagy had a big influence on that, and all he got to do was that he didn't have to head coach. Didn't have to do that. All right. Casey from KC asks, a thought. Let's let Juan Thornhill walk, move Sneed to safety, start McDuffie, Williams, and Watson. What do you think? This is what I was referring to earlier when we were talking about this. I don't hate this, especially as much as the Chiefs have started running some more single high stuff. Obviously still a predominantly two high team. If you go look at their season-long numbers, the two high is very, very, very prevalent. But that was a lot at the beginning of the season. As the end of the season came along, they were running more single high stuff. They were dabbling in that a little bit more. If L'Jarius Sneed and Justin Reed are interchangeable pieces that can either play in the box or play deep, I don't hate that move. I think that gets your best 5 DBs on the field if Juan Thornhill isn't there and doesn't require you to spend any more assets on safety, or, well, they're not going to spend it high on cornerback, certainly, but it gets away from having to spend assets to replace Juan Thornhill because you've still got Brian Cook, you've still got Justin Reed, and now you've got L'Jarius Sneed. You can play Trent McDuffie in the slot. You got big corners on the outside. I actually like that move quite a bit. Now, it moves L'Jarius Sneed further from his impact plays, and so I don't love it. That's what that I like it. I don't love it. I am more than happy to keep L'Jarius Sneed in the slot or as a boundary cornerback. But honestly, if Steve Spagnuolo came out in camp and said, "Hey, guess what? This is what we're doing now," I would be pretty rah-rah about it.
I think as long as somebody comes out and says, this is what we're doing, this is why we think we're going to do it, which would be what we do. Just like if the team was able to come out and portray confidence in their decision to do this, I would fully understand, right? Like, I would get the concept, I'd understand what they're doing, and I wouldn't be mad about it until I got to see it. I would be very willing to see how it plays out before I would be upset. The thing is, though, I think having Sneed move around and play so much shadow coverage and play boundary corner down the stretch of this past year, it makes me think this is something that they've either never had the conversation about or they did and said, we like him at corner.
Yeah. Brandon W. asked, does the linebacker playing the Super Bowl make up for lesser play earlier in the season? Or another way of thinking about this, is Brendan Daly back on staff next year? Maddie, what you think here?
I mean, they went through a lull in the middle. Okay, there was a learning curve to start the year. Then there was a lull in the middle of the year where they were kind of peaking and then fell down a little bit. And then they rebounded really well down the stretch and into the playoffs. So, I mean, I guess, why not bring... I mean, unless you have somebody at the ready... Actually, this is what I'll say. I don't know what's happening with Steve Spagnuolo right now. I would assume there's a lot of coaches, assistant coaches on the staff that might be up for a contract extension, renewal, or to go find a new job. Depending on what you're going to do with that, what's going to happen. Let's say you want to give, I don't know, Joe Cullen a little bit more say. You want to bring back Steve Spagnuolo, but give Joe Cullen more say. Maybe you see who he likes as a linebacker coach. Maybe you are really planning on him being a future DC here, or you try to find someone that he likes to work with. If it's Brendan Daly, it's Brendan Daly. If it's not, it's not. You know what I mean? It's like, so I think that there's kind of different ways to go about it, and it starts with who's going to be your defensive coordinator first.
Yeah, maybe it's Ken Flajoel. As we know, that's how he pronounces his name, because Sean Barber told us after we've been mispronouncing it for a while. Kay Gomiger, real quick, asks, does Spags belong to KC now, or is his greatest legacy in New York? His greatest game's in New York, but he belongs to KC. He's ours. He's all ours now at this point. All right.
Yeah, and as long as we never run him away. Yeah.
Oh, please. Yes. Corey Peter asks, compare contrast Nick Bolton with Derek Johnson. Corey had asked this in the chat on one of our previous episodes, and so going to kind of go through this. DJ was a much looser athlete, which afforded him to play man coverage significantly better. He got his hands on more balls. He was constantly in throwing lanes. His zone dropping was just absolutely elite from the get-go. Like, that's the thing that I think people don't realize. DJ was a first-round linebacker because of a lot of those coverage abilities, because of that blitzing ability, and because of that crazy explosion that he had. DJ also flipped a lot of blocks. His art form was ducking under a climbing blocker or somebody who was unsuspecting and kind of making himself skinny, knifing through and getting into the backfield that way. Nick is not that. Nick's going to get there, but he might run through the guard while that's happening. He's not going to necessarily slip through. He's still going to be just as effective, just as penetrative, but it's not going to be as kind of loose athletically. And you see that in some of his coverage drops as well. That's not to say that he can't get better at them. He certainly did this year, and he's constantly making impact plays and constantly around the ball. But it is a much different way of approaching the linebacker position that the two of them play. Both of them are insanely smart. Both of them are picking up on things before the plays even snap. DJ talks about it all the time with Nick, how far ahead of him, both in the processing and IQ and everything like that, than he was at this point in his career. But athletically, DJ is just a completely different beast on the field and what he could do to deconstruct blocks and stay in phase and coverage. Maddie, my friend, you're muted again.
I don't think there's much of a comparison athletically between the two. And like, you would even want to say, like, when you're talking about the athleticism and what each do, you would like to say that Nick Bolton comes and can deconstruct blocks and stack and shed them better, but that's still not his game either. Like, neither guy built their game around meeting a lead blocker in the hole, stacking them up right there on the spot, and then getting off of the block to make the tackle. They're both trying to slip the tackle or the blocker. Just one was a lot better at it, and that's Derek Johnson. I do think that it takes a lot more eye candy, a lot more concentrated effort to fool Nick Bolton. It still can be done. We saw it this year numerous times, but it takes concentrated effort. You have to go out of your way to give him a lot to look at and try to process through. Derek Johnson, at this same point in his career, just a couple seasons into the NFL, you could just throw just about anything his way and he's chasing it. Like, if he thinks the ball's there, he was chasing it at that point in time. And he grew out of that, obviously, and became a great player. I hope Nick Bolton can keep develop, especially in coverage, especially as a man and a zone defender. I don't know if the skill set's there to be a great man defender, but improve as a zone defender. Don't become a more net positive in passing situations and coverage, and then we can really start to have this conversation. I don't want to demean a guy that was just huge to the Chiefs Super Bowl win, who almost won MVP if they ruled a 50-50 catch the other direction probably. But I don't really think there's much of a comparison between the two. But we also saw Derek Johnson's entire career. We saw him playing at his absolute best already. We don't know what Nick Bolton's best is going to look like.
Derek Johnson got benched at one point in his career by Todd Haley. Absolutely.
Well,
got benched. I know he shouldn't have, but he did get benched. And Derek Johnson should be a Hall of Fame linebacker, damn it. So it's a high bar.
Zach Thomas, so.
God, this one's going to end us. The Zach Thomas thing is going to end us. I am going to end us. No, this question is going to end us. Zach Seminarask says, please describe in earnest detail the sinking feeling of all of the AFC contenders as they realize that this was supposed to be the year that they knocked off the Chiefs. Man, it must suck to be the Buffalo Bills right now. It has to really suck to be the Bills because, like, you spent the past 20 years just kind of living in the shadow of a quarterback that was in your division, that all he did was win championships. He was an unstoppable force. Like, you couldn't get out of the division. They were winning the division pretty much every year. You were competitive. You were a playoff team sometimes, but realistically, it was that other team that had the number, that was going to make it out of the AFC, that was going to go ahead and win. Then you finally get a new quarterback. You You're ready to go. You got a guy that can finally compete. You got a good young team, a good young defense. You're finally ready to rule the division. You're going to be in the number 1 seed conversation each and every year. And now you've got the best player of all time playing in your conference. You got the best player of all time ruining your playoffs constantly. You would have this year again, but they didn't get through Joe Burrow. It must suck to have that sort of futility. And they're the best option of any of the teams that could be in the AFC. Everybody else is an also-ran. Next year, everybody else is an also-ran already. And it sucks. It sucks for them. The sinking feeling of just sitting there and knowing we have to do everything in our power to stop Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid from running this thing again, especially in a rebuild year. So we're going to go out and spend every penny we have, use every asset we have, try and get everything on our roster that we can, because this is the one that we need. And you screwed up because it still didn't work. It must suck to suck.
I mean, even thinking about it this way. The Chiefs won a Super Bowl in 2019 with a lot of high-priced guys, with a lot of very expensive players all around this offense and defense because Patrick Mahomes was on a rookie contract. They tried to do it again in 2020, and they lost in the Super Bowl, large thanks to some injuries, right? Then everybody knew they were going to have to reset stuff. They were going to have to find a way to make it work with Patrick Mahomes on this big contract. That's where traditionally NFL teams, besides the Patriots and a little bit of the Steelers, had not made it work. They had not been able to do that. They had not been able to do that especially consistently. And what happens the very next year? The Chiefs, they're a good football team. They're trying. They get to the AFC Championship game. Oh, wow, they're a bad year. They're only making it to the AFC Championship game, losing in overtime. And then they make this big trade to trade Tyreek Hill. You're in the AFC right now. You're thinking, okay, now that the Chiefs were close to the Patriots level of domination, but there was a chance that they could start on that. And here they are. They lost the Super Bowl. They lost the AFC Championship game. They're trading away Tyreek Hill. Look at all these guys, these moves they're having to make things work now. It ain't happening again. No way. We're all good. We have at least 2 years now, and if we can snuff them out for these next 2 years, then guess what? It doesn't matter. They can do whatever they want after that. Now we're just talking about them like the Indianapolis Colts, which is a great team, but nobody mentions them as a dynasty. Well, guess what? Guess what you did, AFC? You screwed up. You underestimated the Chiefs. You underestimated Brett Veach. You underestimated Andy Reid. You underestimated Patrick Mahomes. And now, as you sit here on, a Saturday, almost a week after the Super Bowl, almost a week after the Chiefs became the 2-time world champions, three-time world champions.
3 times.
Bit of a ring.
We're talking about this roster, though. 2-time. Yeah.
You're sitting here. You're looking up at the sky. You're sitting outside. It's kind of getting dark out. You're looking at the stars, wondering about your little fraudulent existence here in the realm of the AFC. And you're going, damn, we just got beat down for 20 years by Tom Brady and the New England Patriots. And here comes these Kansas City Chiefs. And I don't think they're going to be that. But we really got to find a way to beat them, because even when they have a down year, even when we think they're rebuilding, even when we think that they aren't the best, they aren't set up to win, guess what? They won. They whooped our ass again, and they're going to be better. And guess what? When they have to reset it again, they're going to figure it out, because they've now done it twice. That is a sinking bad feeling for anybody that has been coaching in the AFC or around the AFC since 2000. And what, 2?
Yeah. It just, man, sucks to suck. That's going to do it for 21 questions. Thanks to our good pals at Macadoodles. Like, share, subscribe. Give us 5 stars on Apple, Spotify, whatever your podcatcher is of choice. We will be back with the Lab live on Monday. Ready for you then. Until then, be kind to each other. We'll catch you later.
Thanks for watching this production of KC Sports Network, the fastest growing sports media network in Kansas City. Check out these videos that feature our team of more than 15 former players, insiders, and analysts, bringing you the best Chiefs coverage you can find. Entertain, educate, inform. KC Sports Network.